Hi, and welcome back to my channel where we discuss the social, political, and economical issues that are affecting our country. By now, I think it's a matter of fact that we can confirm the political situations in the country probably you can say has been controlled or has been pushed on a partial slowdown based on the pandemic that we're fighting right now. But as a matter of fact, before the virus came into place, it was obvious the song that was being sung outside here was about the BBI. And up to, I think, around 15th, when the committee on the BBI, Yusuf Haj, said that the referendum where we are right now, it's inevitable. This is said based on the recommendations that people were taking forth to their committee when they had sessions around the country, but basically in Nairobi. So they say top of the agenda is looking at the executive system, some of the most proposed, and two is how corruption is being tackled. Those are some of the two cores. So in his address to one of the medias, he alluded to the fact that the report is going to be ready by probably around April. If I didn't get it wrong, it was around April, and he said that it is going to be divided in three areas. One of the first areas was that in the proposal that needed legislation, by legislation I so mean proposal that need to go to the parliament, they've been segmented as part A, and part 2, the proposal that need to go to the referendum. And that was the part 2 of the proposal. And the third one were those that needed the attention of the premier and the president. So basically, where we are right now, we are waiting for the report. I probably can call it BBI2 report. That is, they say they're going to have a temporary or a tentative report by April, end of April. So we are talking about between April and June, we'll be having a report that probably it will tell us which dimension are going to take as a country based on the BBI and all the political happenings. Back to our pandemic. We are reporting 4 cases right now in Kenya. And you see, when you look at the background of the viruses, the first one that it really struck the world was in 1914, immediately after the World War, where the soldiers were going back home. It nearly killed between 50 million to 100 million people. That was when the world had a population of around roughly 1.8 billion people. And this flu that was being called a Spanish flu then, the influenza then, killed around 50 to 100 million people. In Kenya, the most affected part probably was around the Taita Taveta areas and some part of coast. And the number was we lost around roughly 5,000 to 5,208, 5,300 there. So, is it supposed to bring a scare? No, yes, is the answer. But before we get scared, how prepared are we? That is the issue that we should be discussing right now. You see, when you're talking of 4 people, and up to today, we are talking about cases rising in Ethiopia. I've not had so far any case reported in Uganda, but I've had Tanzania, I've had Somalia. These are Eastern African countries. So back again, I go back to the issue of preparedness in terms of Eastern African economic bloc. Right now, everyone is securing and safeguarding their borders. But as we safeguard our borders internally, how are we prepared as a nation? So up to around 2 days ago, Italy was reporting around 345 cases in a day. We're talking about a day. Deaths, not cases of coronavirus being reported, it's deaths. So I shared something on Facebook about the trajectory, that if this trajectory continues the way it is, we are lucky as Africans, it started outside. But moving closer, you'll see there is a projection of around each and every after 1 to 2 days, there are cases rising in Kenya of reported cases. So how do we handle them? Mutahi Kagwe in his speech earlier was talking about someone, probably the media is reporting about someone who is said to have left the hospital. after being tested positive. This person goes outside, and when she interacts with around 85 people, and being brought back to Mbagathi Hospital, he or she is confirmed positive. Interact with the 85 people. Those are the glaring things that we don't want to hear as a country right now. But look, in one of her statements, she says that even after she left the hospital, after being confirmed to be positive, there was no follow-up of her till it was on her own volition that she took herself back to the hospital. That is when she was confirmed positive. These are the issues that we're saying. There is something called post-corona, post-testing. Very vital issues. As we are talking right now, counties are taking measures. In Mombasa, the measures have been taken are closing the entertainment joints. Already, jobs have been spoiled. People are already counting losses. And according to the governor, this was supposed to be extended to the next 30 days. Those are just entertainment joints. We are looking at mosques in Mombasa. We are looking at churches. And most critically, we are looking at the markets and the slums. These are areas not only in Mombasa, but generally the whole of Kenya, where if this pandemic hits some of these areas, remember in the slums, we have poor shortages of several issues. One is water. When we say that wash your hands in a slum, already this slum is not having clean water. Washing your hands with dirty water, that is one of the issues. That's why areas like slums and markets in the African setup will highly be affected. Look, people are saying that they are taking a toll in terms of going back to the countrysides. Look, traditionally in the African setup, our parents belong to the countryside. That is, if I come from Mombasa, I'm staying and finding my hustle in Mombasa, my parents are somewhere in Kisii, my parents are somewhere in Migori, my parents are somewhere in Taita Taveta, my parents are somewhere in Elgeyo Marakwet or Kericho or somewhere, Gatundu or anywhere. Our parents are aged probably between 50, 60 ahead. Those are the numbers. So according to the statistics of the coronavirus pandemic, they are saying that the first lot that is being most affected are people who are elderly, between the ages of around 50s, 60s, going ahead, up to around 70s and 80s. Let's talk about 55, 60, and 80s. The second lot of the most affected are people who are having diseases, people like who are suffering from diabetes, tuberculosis, people who are undergoing chemotherapies and stuff. These are some of the glaring issues that when we say we want to run from the countryside and go to the villages, then are we having some sense of inhumanity? Take for a case, I have coronavirus and I've not been tested. I don't know, I don't have the symptoms, just like Idris Elba had his. He said that he interacted with someone but never had these symptoms. Innocently, I say I want to go visit my parents and take a break from the 30-day period given by my governor. And I say I want to go visit the countryside. There I am interacting with my parents normally. No symptoms, no anything. But in real sense, I was not tested, but I have coronavirus. A case happens whereby in my interaction with my parents at home, I'll feel safer. So I won't even look at the social distancing of 1 meter apart. It will be life normal. My parents will be at risk. Before we think of rushing to the villages, look about a scenario whereby what is the proximity of the villages or the homesteads to the dispensaries, to the healthcare workers, to the community healthcare workers? What is the proximity in case where this pandemic breaks in? Another thing, I'll look at it from the point of, look at burials. How are they affected? Burials in a traditional African setup will have masses of nothing less than 50 or more. Kakamega said that if one of your patients dies, you bury the same day. But you see, in tradition, you'll find an African setup, they'll take that body, take it to their homestead or their homes, place it there for like 3 days, till when they perform all the ritual and rites, till when they bury that person. Assuming in these 3 days, people come in and go, coming to look at the body, they go. And in between, one of the family members has coronavirus. I'm not trying to look at the extremes, but I'm trying to look at the which realities are we looking at right now? So I'm not saying the villages are bad, but how prepared are the villages right now? We are talking of a situation whereby already it's a pandemic. So if it's a pandemic, then it simply means that the virus is very contagious. Another thing is that we are saying it has high mortality. That means it's deadly. Another one, we are saying it's hard to treat. And then we're also looking at the numbers. That's the most important thing right now. So how prepared are we as a country? That is the question I want us to take and put into consideration. How prepared are we? Are we washing our hands? You see, right now, it all goes to social behavior change. We need to change our behaviors of how we interact. It costs nothing to say namaste. It costs nothing. It costs nothing to have social distancing of around 1 meter. Social behavior change is coming into context. And one way of doing it right now is how do we prevent it and how do we take measures as individuals. We are not practitioners. I am not a doctor. But I know there are some things that I can do, that I can address, that can really help us in fighting the pandemic. Is it time to castigate? Time will come when you castigate and ask the tough questions. Where were the 239 passengers that came into the country? Were they self-quarantined for the 14 days? Those are some of the tough questions we'll start asking. Why did we still have flights that were still coming in areas, from areas that are hotspots, countries like Italy? Those are some of the questions we'll ask. I hear there's a conspiracy theory that says the pandemic is related to the 5G network. This was raised by Kerry Hilson sometime last week. There's some of the issues we'll need to start discussing, but at the moment, while self-quarantine looks like a tall order, while a lockdown looks like it's not only a matter of if, but when, it begins with you. It begins with the talks that we are having alongside quarantine. We don't need to scare about. It shall come to pass. But when it comes to pass, as a nation, how prepared are we? We need to take care of ourselves. Usafi wetu, afya yetu, jukumu letu. In my next episode, my next channel, I'm going to show you, probably we're going to look at how it is being spread. We are going to have like a rough simulation of how it's spread. I'll be part and participatory with one of my few friends. Probably we see how sometimes we may have the virus and we spread it amongst ourselves without us knowing, from a setup where there are, let's say, metal rods. Remember, it's being said corona can stay on a metal rod for around 12 hours. Then how do we interact with these places? Markets, in churches. Thanks so much for listening to me. Be safe. Let's continue. I'm not so sure if prayers are not. I don't say that it's very important right now, but I'm not so sure if we need to look at congregations set up right now. While it's good to pray as a nation, preparedness, the most important thing. Thank you. See you next time.